Today's number 25 most urgent vulnerability is CVE 2026-66804, a Windows 10 22H2 flaw that can let an already authorized local attacker elevate privileges through Windows cross-device service. This is not described as a remote internet-facing break-in, but that does not make it harmless. In many real intrusions, the first foothold is only the beginning. The dangerous part is what happens next, turning a limited account or local access into stronger control over the machine. That is why local privilege escalation bugs matter so much in endpoint defense. This is the Daily Ranked CVE Brief, What to Patch First, ranked by Real Exploitation Signal, CISA Kev, First EPSS, and CVSS, every day. CVE 2026-66804 is not on CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities list in the data we have, but it carries a high CVSS score and a high EPSS percentile, so it deserves a serious, practical look. The official NVD description is short but important. Improper access control in Windows cross-device service allows an authorized attacker to elevate privileges locally. Let's unpack that in plain English. The affected product listed for this brief is Microsoft/Windows 10 22H2, and the vulnerable area is Windows cross-device service. The weakness category is CVE-284, improper access control. That means the software is not correctly enforcing who is allowed to do what. Access control is the boundary between a normal user and sensitive actions, files, services, or privileges. When that boundary is wrong, a user who is allowed to be on the system may be able to perform actions that should be reserved for a more privileged context. The key phrase is authorized attacker. This is someone who already has some legitimate local access or code execution on the device. The vulnerability is about moving upward from there. Verdict: this is a high-impact local privilege escalation issue, and it should be prioritized on Windows endpoints where low-privileged users, shared access, or untrusted workloads exist. The CVSS score is 7.8, high. The most important metric is the attack vector, local. That tells us this is not scored as something an attacker can trigger directly across the network. They need local access to the affected system. But the second key point is that only low privileges are required, and no user interaction is required according to the vector. So once an attacker has a basic foothold, the barrier to attempting escalation is not described as high. The impact side is also severe. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability are all rated high. In practical terms, successful privilege elevation can expose sensitive data, allow system changes, and potentially disrupt the endpoint. That combination is why a local bug still lands in high territory. CVE 2026-66804 is not listed in CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, based on the data for today's brief. That is a meaningful signal. We do not have a CISA KEV confirmation here. But absence from KEV is not the same as absence of risk. The EPSS percentile is 0.87894, which means it ranks higher than most vulnerabilities in the EPSS model's exploitation likelihood ordering. We should be careful with that wording. This is a percentile signal, not proof of active exploitation. The real-world danger is that local privilege escalation flaws are often force multipliers. A phished user account, a stolen credential, or a limited foothold may not give an intruder full control at first. A bug like this can change the balance. It can turn a contained compromise into a broader endpoint compromise, especially where least privilege, endpoint monitoring, and patching discipline are weak. Conceptually, the path to this vulnerability starts after the attacker already has a way to act locally on the Windows 10 22H2 system. That could mean a legitimate low-privileged account, an interactive session, or local code running under limited rights. From a defender's point of view, the important idea is not the exploit mechanics. We are not covering payloads, commands, or proof-of-concept steps. The important idea is reachability. If a standard user can sign into the machine, or if software can run under a low-privileged user context, then a local privilege escalation flaw becomes relevant. Improper access control suggests that a protected boundary may not be checked correctly. An attacker would be looking for a way to make Windows cross-device service accept an action or transition that should have been denied. Your defense is to reduce footholds, reduce local privilege, and patch the boundary. To check exposure, start with Asset Inventory. Identify systems running Windows 10 22H2 because that is the product named in today's data. Then confirm exact applicability, affected configurations, and update guidance directly in Microsoft's advisory for CVE 2026-66804. Do not guess based only on a headline, and do not assume every Windows device in your environment is in the same state. For prioritization, focus first on endpoints where local compromise would have the most value. Shared workstations, systems used by many standard users, machines that handle sensitive data, and devices where users commonly run third-party applications. Also look at update compliance. Are the relevant Windows security updates actually installed? Are there deferred patch rings that leave a population behind? If you manage endpoints centrally, compare inventory, vulnerability management findings, and update deployment status to find gaps before an attacker does. The primary remediation is to follow Microsoft's guidance for CVE 2026-66804 and apply the applicable security update for affected systems. Because we are not given a patch name or exact fixed build in today's data, use the Microsoft advisory as the source of truth for those details. Beyond patching, treat this as a reminder to harden privilege boundaries, remove unnecessary local administrator rights, keep day-to-day users as standard users wherever possible, restrict who can log on locally to sensitive machines, review remote access paths that could give an attacker an interactive foothold, make sure endpoint protection is running and centrally monitored. If there are systems that cannot be updated immediately, reduce exposure by limiting who can access them, increasing monitoring, and placing them in tighter operational controls until they are remediated. Do not wait for KEV listing before acting. KEV is a confirmation signal, not a prerequisite for patching. For detection, remember the attack is local. Perimeter network logs may not show the key moment. Watch the endpoint. Useful signals include unexpected privilege changes, new membership in local administrator groups, unusual service control activity, and suspicious process behavior following a low-privilege user logon. Since the vulnerable component is Windows cross-device service, defenders should pay attention to anomalous activity around that service compared with the organization's normal baseline. Normal should be predictable: known users, known devices, expected service behavior, and routine administrative activity from approved tools. Abnormal could be a standard user account suddenly associated with privilege changes, unexpected service manipulation, or endpoint detections clustered around a machine that was previously only lightly used. Correlate Windows security logs, endpoint detection alerts, asset inventory, and identity data. The goal is not to detect a specific exploit string, it is to catch the privilege escalation pattern. Bottom line, CVE 2026-66804 is a high-severity Windows 10 22H2 local privilege escalation vulnerability in Windows cross-device service. It is categorized as improper access control, CVE-284. It is not listed in CISA CAV in today's data, but the EPSS percentile is high. The CVSS impact is high across confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and the attack requires only low privileges with no user interaction. That makes it a serious endpoint risk after initial access. Your action plan is straightforward. Confirm exposure in the Microsoft advisory, patch affected systems, reduce local privilege, and monitor for suspicious privilege changes and service activity. If this brief helped you decide what to handle next, subscribe to the Daily Ranked CVE Brief, what to patch first, ranked by real exploitation signal every day.